Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and gittens, welcome back to another thrilling, exciting episode of Ask Chuck Dixon. We're going to crack open a Pandora's box of your questions, real puzzlers to test the minds of your genial host. Basically, here's where you get to ask me, a world-renowned, beloved everywhere I go, comic book writer, Chuck Dixon. You get to ask me about what I do for a living, and what I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste another second of your precious time. Brandon Woodall, getting a little pedantic here, but in ACD 269, you mentioned the classic Western period is running from the end of the Civil War to the start of World War I. What about Westerns set during the Civil War, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? I also can't think of many, if any, that actually take place around the start of World War I. Yeah, I mean, there are Westerns. I mean, let's face it, frontier stories back when the Ohio River Valley was the West. These go all the way back to the 1700s. But when we're talking about like movie Westerns, yes, there are some that take place during the Civil War. There's quite a few take place during the Civil War. But when we think of the classic Hollywood Western with the gunfight in the street, the cattle drive, the Indian Wars, which yes, there were Indian Wars prior, or Indian Wars going all the way back to the first white guys showing up. Uh, so, um, but when we think of the classic Western, the classic action adventure Western, we're thinking majority of them are post Civil War, and that includes the many television series and many movies. Now, Westerns that take place just before the start of World War One, there's a lot of them. It was like a whole genre of subgenre of Westerns, anything dealing with the Mexican Revolution, Pancho Villa, that's all 20th century. And most famously, I think the greatest of all of them set in that period is the Wild Bunch. It is set in 1917, and they even mention in the story the upcoming or the expected contribution of the United States to World War One. They mentioned that this is the troops in World War One will use airplanes. They talk about airplanes. There is a car in the story, and of course automatic weapons. The Browning 30 caliber at the climax of the film. The Wild Bunch is armed with 45 automatics and pump shotguns. And the West was very much wild. I mean, the last Indian Apache raid was in the 1920s. So the Wild Wild West stays wild well into the 20th century. And the Wild Bunch didn't really kick off having Westerns set in the early 20th century. There were a lot of them prior, via rides, the Americano. I can think of a whole bunch. Wing of the Eagle. I can think of a whole bunch. But it certainly started a trend that ran into the 70s. Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid came out the same year as the Wild Bunch, and the story ranges from like the 1890s into the 20th century. Big Jake has automobiles, motorcycles. It is clearly set just prior to World War One. And then there were, I jumped ahead here. And the Italians, spaghetti westerns, there's lots of them. The Companeros, the Mercenary. There's tons and tons of Italian westerns set during the Mexican Revolution, well into the 20th century, and largely because so many of the Italian film directors were communists, and they wanted to make like political allegories. So they used the Mexican Revolution as a backdrop for their screeds. So yeah, there's quite a few. There's quite a few, and some really good ones. The Mercenary is spectacular if you ever get a chance to see it. Franco Nero at his very, very best. Sid S. Warren, I hope I pronounced that right. Do you keep up with the various portrayals of Bane in other media? I just saw the 2000s cartoon series The Batman, which is a very different take on the character. He's more of a masked mercenary with a code of honor than the mastermind that you created. Just wanted to know if you're aware of the show and what your thoughts are on it. Plus, if you had any involvement or input on the show. Keep up the great work. Looking forward to Seven Deadly Sinners. Yeah, I was aware of it. I have kids. I had young. They were young, and I think my youngest was watching this show, so I was aware of it. Also, since I have a stake in Bane, literally a percentage, I tend to seek out. I'm the guy in the. I'm the adult guy in the Target toy aisle. I'm not shopping for toys. I'm just looking to see if there's any new Bane stuff that I need to know about. Uh, so, um, yeah, I was very much aware of this iteration. I might have watched part of one of the episodes. I didn't. I wasn't crazy about the look of the show. My youngest liked it, not as much as he liked Batman Beyond, but he liked this. Um, but all the various iterations. Graham and I are always happy to see a new iteration of Bane, be it an action figure, a cartoon character, live action, video game, Lego. We love it all because it, helps pay the rent. These nice little checks we get now and again. Tom Hardy, I mean, if we're going to run him down, Tom Hardy, they portrayed him as a mastermind. Very, very happy with that. Couldn't be happier about that. I think my favorite is aside from the video games, which I don't hear about because I don't game. Everybody tells me the video games, it's a very accurate portrayal. It falls in line with what Graham and I created. But my favorite is his very first appearance on Batman the Animated Series, voiced by Henry Silva. And I was very, very happy with this interpretation. I like the look. I like his attitude. I like that they made him a mastermind. He's a smart guy as well as a, big bruising brute that can tear your head off. Batman and Robin, the last Schumacher movie, not as happy with. The checks were nice. I like the look. The scene of Bane tearing the bat signal off the roof of police headquarters. That's a great scene. I just wish it was in a better movie. But I haven't yet seen a live action version of Bane that I'm completely happy with. I mean, didn't he appear on Gotham in a really, really silly version of Bane? Looked like they slapped it together after a visit to Home Depot. But, hopefully with this new 3-part animated Nightfall that they're doing, that I hope they're still doing after Paramount bought Warner's, but hopefully there we'll see Bane presented exactly as Graham and I intended him to appear. And, but there's always the comic book versions. People say, well, they ruined it. They ruined the character. No, they didn't ruin the character because the comics are eternal. You can go back and read the comics. And Bane is perfectly safe in the world in which he was created, the comic book medium. So Hollywood can't ruin anything because the source material is still there. And you can forget all about. I mean, look, Bane made no impression, Batman and Robin, no impression. But after Dark Knight Rises, household name. They're making jokes about him on Family Guy and Simpsons. Everybody knows who Bane is. So, you can always rehabilitate these characters even after a crappy portrayal. Thanks for bringing up Seven Deadly Sinners. Seven Deadly Sinners still has a little while to go here. I think, like maybe a week and a half, maybe less. So, Seven Deadly Sinners is me and Bob Harden bringing you a retro 1970s grindhouse outlaw biker gang flick on paper. And nobody can do it like Bob. These images are just a hint at the pure madness he put down on the page. So thanks for mentioning that. And there's a link below this video if you want to go pick up this book. 120-page graphic novel done in one story. It's not the beginning of a series. I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say that some of the sinners don't make it to the end of the book. And you can find that through Rip Ascend. And there's also this fantastic movie poster if you're watching. It is a full-size one-sheet movie poster. And there's a beer koozie and t-shirts and really cool stickers, all designed by Bob. In addition to being a master cartoonist, Bob is an amazing design guy as well, as you can see from this poster. I mean, if that doesn't bring back memories of drive-ins, theaters, and Roger Corman double bills, I don't know what does. Gentle Savage is here with Mr. Dixon. Do you have a personal favorite superhero gadget? Do you think it would be cool to own in real life, or that you think have been used most of creatively in the comic? Every time I go to the mail or go shopping, I wish I had Wolverine's claws. Cellophane. I'm not getting any better at it. I hate cellophane. And the claws would be so cool to have. Just real handy. But I got to go with the Batmobile. I mean, it's not a gadget; it's a car, but it is a gadget. I mean, who wouldn't want a car that's completely theft-proof? Plus, looks awesome and has all the cool stuff. And you'd be the fastest thing on the road. You could park it anywhere because it will subdue anybody trying to steal it. And I just think it's like, when I was a kid, I drew the Batmobile, the 1950s Batmobile with the big bat face on the front of it. I drew that over and over and over again. Absolutely fascinated with the Batmobile. Who isn't? Actually, there's a guy in my neighborhood that has a 1966 Batmobile, and I've only seen him once. And I always take the road near where I saw it, hoping to see that again. But you actually see it on the road coming your way. If he was going my way, I would have followed him home and asked him a million questions. But Batmobile, very, very cool. David Jordan, I remember you saying that you wanted to use the Wraith in DC and the Shroud at Marvel, but weren't able to. Can you tell us where and how you wanted to use them? Actually, the Shroud. I'm going to start with the Shroud. Gary Quapis and I presented Marvel with a new interpretation of the Shroud, and this Ditko created backup character. He used to appear in Moon Knight, and he's a crime fighter with a supernatural twist, and kind of like a Night Stalker, kind of like the Supernatural TV series, and we pitched it as really emphasizing the horror angle. And he would meet all of Marvel's horror characters, their Frankenstein monster, Werewolf by Night, all the rest of it, probably creep into a little Doctor Strange territory. But we didn't get anywhere with it. And then a year or two later, they did the Midnight Suns, if you remember that. It was a series of books that kind of looked superhero-y, but also with a horror angle. That it failed to gain an audience, but I think Gary and I could have captured an audience with this version of the Shroud. If you're watching this, you can see the pages that he did, pitch pages he did. Very, very cool. But just another project that will never be. So as far as, it's not the Wraith, it's the Wrath. And he was a character who appeared in a Batman special. It was drawn by Michael Golden. I cannot remember who wrote it. That's probably key to why we couldn't use the character. We were told over and over and over again. We would ask at every Bat Summit, can we use the Wrath? And the Wrath is a flip side of the coin from Batman. I mean, a direct flip side of the coin from Batman. He has a kind of a Batman look. He operates like Batman. He's like a serious version of Killer Moth, except he supports criminals. He's the antithesis in a way that the Joker isn't. a direct antithesis to Batman, and quite the challenge. In that Batman special, he presented. I think that's why we love the character so much. Readers and creators, we glommed onto the character because he was such a threat to Batman. A legitimate. This is a guy that's going to be trouble for Batman and Robin going forward. But as far as I know, well, he might have been used in recent years. But whatever the rule was, probably some sweetheart deal based on who created him. We were never allowed to use him, and we were never told why. It's like, we want to use the Wrath. Nightfall, the Wrath should show up. Wouldn't it be cool to have the Wrath show up and fight Bane? For supremacy over Gotham's underworld. It's like, no, you can't use that character. Heartbreaking, really. Maybe someday the story will be told. It could be as simple as there was an editorial prejudice against the character. It could be, I'm answering my own question now. I've never really thought about this, but it's very, very possible that Paul Levitz hated this concept and just said, don't ever do that again. I don't know why he would think that, but, I had editors who absolutely loathed the Blue Beetle, but they couldn't explain why. Maybe their parents beat them with a rolled up Blue Beetle comic one time. I don't know. DC is the house of mystery. As Marvel is the house of ideas. DC is like so many weird things about DC. Joshua Ignatowski, where have you been? On ACD, you've shown a habit of learning how to improve in your writing by thinking critically about what media you watch or read and asking yourself, how did they do this? How did you learn this skill? And what got you to start utilizing it? Over time, we watch things or read things or listen to music, and it's like, I like this, I don't like that. And that's where most of us leave it behind. I hated that movie. Why? I don't know. I don't watch that TV show. Why? It stinks. I don't listen to that group anymore. Why? The early stuff was better. We hear these things all the time. So we are discerning about what we take in as entertainment, but we don't always articulate it. We don't always think, why don't I like this actor or actress? Why don't I like this music? Why doesn't this TV show speak to me? And there's so much going on. We don't have time to sit and think about these things. But I always did. When I was a kid, a really little kid, I was 4. A little girl in the neighborhood told me that we were out playing in the backyard, all of us, and a little girl's mother yelled out. This was in Phil. We were still living in Philadelphia, West Philadelphia. We were in the back alley off 45th and Walnut, behind our apartment building. We're all playing in the alley, doing whatever 4-year-olds do. And the mom called from the fire escape. Yeah, it was those kind of buildings. Called from the fire escape to this little girl that Huckleberry Hound was on. I tell you, that was it. She went in the house. And I thought, Huckleberry Hound, what's this Huckleberry Hound guy? Who's this? I thought it was a Western. So I started watching Huckleberry Hound. I went in too. I'm like, hey, I want to check this out. It was on one of the 3 channels. Very easy to find. And it was, hey, this guy must be Huckleberry Hound. He's a talking dog. So I started watching it, and I watched it for a while, and I thought, I don't see what this neighbor girl sees in this. I don't know why she has to stop everything she's doing to watch the show. It seems kind of dumb to me. Okay, so from that point on, it was on against the Bugs Bunny show, and I just switched over to the Bugs Bunny show. Never went back to Huckleberry Hound, and never really thought about why I made that distinction. What was better about Bugs Bunny? Over time, because I'm a geek, as an adult, I become to understand what's cool about Bugs Bunny is he's this cool. He's Antarctic. He's into anarchy and chaos, and you don't mess with Bugs Bunny. And Bugs Bunny's cool. He's not like Daffy Duck, who's psychotic. You don't mess with Bugs Bunny, and everything's fine. He could be your best friend. You mess with Bugs Bunny, He's going to ruin your day, ruin your life, possibly kill you because he's got a lot of dynamite on him. And that's what I liked. And, I'm still a huge Warner Brothers fan to this day. But this was a decision I made at 4. Okay. Now, when I was a kid, I loved monster movies. Every kid loves monster movies. And my biggest problem was, where's the monster? When I was a kid, all I cared about was the monster. I didn't care about the plot. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to see Godzilla show up and break things. I wanted to see Frankenstein show up and wrestle with the werewolf. I wanted to see spooky, scary monster stuff and destruction. That's all I cared about. I didn't care if the guy got the girl. I didn't even want the girl in the movie. I wanted to see the army fighting monsters. I wanted to see the castle burning. I wanted to see the villagers screaming and yelling. I wanted to see vampires crawling up walls. That's all I cared about. And I really didn't think about story. But as I got older, I understood some monster movies and sci-fi movies are better than others. I watched every sci-fi movie because there weren't that many really around. Today, you can spend your life watching a new sci-fi movie every day. But then there wasn't much of a choice. And every summer, the local TV station, CBS affiliate, would have Science Fiction Week. And I watched everyone, just glued to the tube, all week. And I remember watching Teenagers from Outer Space. And it's like, this isn't that good. It looks like it was shot on 16 millimeter by people who didn't have enough money to make an actual movie. And it's just kind of silly and dumb, and this is like the third time watching it. Like the third Science Fiction Week, I'm probably 7. And I'm going, this isn't as good as I remembered it. And then you got things like The Thing. I still remember the first time I saw The Thing. Totally enthralled. It's like, whoa, this is way better than most of these movies made in this era. Because I'm starting to get aware of 1950s giant monsters, aliens. 50s were like this heyday of science fiction films. And I knew this one's better than the rest because it scared me. I kept thinking about it afterwards. I was never bored. Even though there was like a love interest thing in it, they kept it kind of funny, so I was constantly engaged. And, as I got older, of course, I began thinking, well, what makes the thing, and I did reading and read criticism. And that's the key thing. If you can't articulate your different proclivities in entertainment, if you read criticism, you watch a movie, you read a criticism of it. The critic might disagree with you, he might agree with you, but he's going to have a different viewpoint and make you think about what you just saw and start to pull it apart. Same thing for Westerns. I mean, I grew up on Westerns. They were on TV. They reran movies. They were rerunning old, Hopalong Cassidy things in the afternoon. Westerns were literally on TV constantly. You could change the channel almost any time of day and see a Western. Somebody was running a Western. And I watched them and I enjoyed them. I still enjoy TV Westerns, but, they're not great. They're not great. They're not like, you're going to remember them. But then as I got older, I started watching Western movies, older Western movies. Now, my dad and my mom both took me to movies to see Westerns, John Wayne and Robert Mitchum and guys like that. But I started watching older Westerns. And when I saw Winchester 73, Jimmy Stewart, 1950, I was like, whoa, totally blown away by this movie. Still am totally blown away by this movie. And I really started to think, I'm like 12 or 13 now. And I'm really starting to think about, what did I just watch? What made it different? What was, and I started thinking about, well, there was so much going on and there were, dual plot lines running, and it was constantly engaging, and the way the action was shot and the way the actors acted and the scale of it, it seemed big, and and then from there I started seeking out other Westerns like it. It sort of opened my mind to any kind of Western that came along. And, these are the things that happen. Now, when I really started to articulate, in my mind, understand, why I like this, why I don't like this, what do I prefer in my entertainment, was we would visit relatives and they had New Yorker magazines. And I just started reading the cartoons. I love the cartoons. So I would go, and everybody be doing, adults. I'm a kid still. Adults would be, drinking and listening to music and talking about the events of the day. And I would go off and find something to read, and I would find these New Yorkers, and I would go through all the cartoons. Then I started reading the film reviews, the capsule film reviews by Pauline Kael, and they were these short little. They're much like the review, not on an intellectual basis, but in a format basis. They're much like the film reviews that I post on Facebook. They're very short, 200 words at most, 300 words, and they get right to the heart of why she liked this movie or didn't like this other movie, and it is in very, artful but brusque terminology. Just break this movie down. Why this is good. Why, and that really sort of opened the part of my mind for thinking about entertainment of all kinds and what I think about it and what I don't. And it was okay to leave something behind like Huckleberry Hound that sucked and go for something better, and why that was happening. So it's kind of important to know why you like something and why you didn't like something, beyond, uh, it was stupid, you know. Oh, or I didn't like the seats at the movie theater. Yeah, you ever see those Amazon reviews? You're looking for, is this movie any good? And there's always that review. The disc came cracked. Well, that's not a review of the movie. That's not what we're here for. Every disc is not going to come cracked. Amazon let you do the exchange and you're fine. Why are you here telling us this? Twin spin, of course Joshua gets a twin spin. It's as easy as rolling out of bed for him. Okay, Joshua Ignatowski says, you've talked previously on ACD about how you expanded Moon Knight's rogues gallery during your time writing him. When coming up with new villains for characters, how have you come up with ones that feel like they belong in a certain hero's rogues gallery specifically, as opposed to any other character's one? Yeah, that's the thing, is that's a trope in comics that you really can't get away from. You really can't break. You've got to have villains that somehow relate to the hero. And I always return to Bushman. I didn't create Bushman. I created some other villains for Moon Knight, but this is the one that always sticks. Bushman fits Moon Knight because in my iteration of Moon Knight, he's a former mercenary, and Bushman is like this guy from his past. When Mark Spector was a mercenary in Africa, and Bushman is kind of psychotic, Idi Amin type character, and that seemed to fit because he's someone from Moon Knight's past. They share a world, and you don't. But I remember in my Moon Knight run, the Acts of Vengeance crossover happened, and it was a cross company Marvel crossover, and basically it was a change partners and dance villain thing, much like Last Laugh that Scott Beatty and I did in 2000. So you had villains that the hero had never met before, and it was like mixing them all up, and it made for some interesting stories, but you couldn't do that ongoing. I mean, there's a reason why Superman's arch nemesis is a multi-billionaire, is the richest man in the world, because that only makes sense because he has the money to invest researching about Superman, trying to find a new weakness, trying to find some way to thwart Superman. Whereas like a bad guy who was simply strong, and every time he and Superman met, they just fought and knocked down half of Metropolis, it gets tired after a while. But Lex Luthor is like the perfect foil for Superman, and also because Lex Luthor, after his earliest iterations, where he's simply a criminal, and Superman catches him and sticks him in jail until Lex invents something to break him out of jail. you know, but now, um, Lex Luthor is like not a criminal. He's like this extra legal guy. He's just outside the bounds of the law. You can't prove anything. Aren't we familiar with that these days? You can't prove anything. And Superman, because he's a good guy and the American way and the rule of law and all that, he just doesn't go after Lex and throw him off a cliff, or cast him into orbit around the planet. He plays by the rules, and Lex, uses the rule because he's so wealthy, and we live in a corrupt society. He's able to manipulate things that Superman has no control over. Even Superman can't directly defeat Lex by playing by the rules. I remember, I don't want to say the creator's name. Maybe he wouldn't want me to say it, but he always thought that Superman should just meet with Lex, and then Lex is like, "Yeah, you can't touch me. There's nothing you can do about me." And then Superman says, "Yes, I can. I've just bombarded you with my X-ray vision. You've got 6 months to live." Uh, kind of dark, but yeah, that might happen. Doc Ock with Spider-Man, same thing. I mean, Doc Ock is a technological genius, as apparently Peter Parker is as well, and his mania and his powers they work with Spider-Man. I mean, he is a threat. He's not like a build up, Arnold Schwarzenegger type of guy. Without these his octopus legs, Peter Parker finish him up in 30 seconds without even thinking about it. But with this technology he has, he's a real danger to Spider-Man, and he's the perfect arch nemesis. I know Green Goblin, but Green Goblin's dead. Get over it. But Doc Ock is perfect because even Dr. Octavius has this Venn diagram with Peter Parker with their interest in science and everything else. So it fits, and he's always a challenge he always presents a new challenge for Spider-Man, which is cool. Reverse Flash, that's pretty obvious. This character would be pointless if he was, well, maybe not as a Green Lantern villain because he's dressed in yellow. Maybe that would work, but he's obviously created Reverse Flash, Yellow Flash, obviously created and an indelible part of Flash's. I mean, his origin and everything else is actually more fascinating than Barry Allen's. But the perfect nemesis. Crimson Dynamo for Iron Man. I mean, obviously it's technologically based. He's like Iron Man, except he's an evil commie. He's a perfect foil because they're pretty evenly matched. But you've got characters like Thor and Loki. I mean, I realize Jack and Stan didn't create them. They're from Norse mythology, but even back then they seemed to understand the supervillain has to complement the hero in some way, has to have something that pulls them together and draws them apart. And Batman villains, Denny O'Neil always said, Batman villains, he preferred his Batman villains to be human and ground-based. He didn't like characters like Mr. Freeze or Man-Bat or Clayface. But I always thought whatever challenge you presented to Batman, he'd be able to handle it. So to me, he's a character that sort of stands apart, where whatever challenge you put to him, he'll either handle it himself or know who to call in. I always said if you give him 6 months, Batman could defeat Galactus. But yeah, you got to think, and maybe it's a trope that, no, it's just part of the superhero thing. It's like the secret identity and the costume, the villain that complements the hero, the villain that, it's a tired phrase, the villain that is the other side of the coin. It's a thing. It's a superhero thing. We all want it. We all expect it. You just have to think about it in a different way. Triple spin. All right, Joshua, you're up again. Got any more updates on your Buttermilk graphic novel with Compass Comics? Well, Buttermilk is a project that, it's real. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's personal to me. I was never a movie cowboy star, but it's sort of, geeky personal to me. I this comedy crime caper thing set in Hollywood in the early 1930s about a former silent cowboy film star who has to make his way now in the talkies. And bad things happen when his signature horse, gets kidnapped. And I'm just kind of waiting on artwork from a bunch of people. I have a alternative cover and then the main feature drawn by Matt Cosson. I'm kind of waiting on the finished art for all of that, and it'll be it's looking like it'll be like a 48 page, maybe 60-page book, and it'll be formatted like a European comic album, basically the size of a magazine with a square bound. And but I'm having a lot of fun with it. Like I said, there's a lead feature. There's a backup story, which Frank Fosco and I did, and I love the artwork on this. And it recreates a quote unquote lost Tuck Taylor film. Tuck Taylor is the cowboy star here. Buttermilk is the name of his horse. It recreates a lost Tuck Taylor silent movie on paper. And you can see here, if you're watching this, Frank just knocked it out of the park. And then there's another 5-pager with art by Bob C. Harden about Conchita Bonita, who's a Mexican film star who's enamored with Tuck Taylor. And this story shows her trying to make him jealous. And Bob, once again, just kills it. But there'll be alternative covers and extras. And Sergio Cariello did a really, really great caricature of me as a singing cowboy as an introduction to one of the stories. And I think you'll dig it. But it's just not done yet. But you'll hear about it here first. I promise that. Dara O'Sullivan. Online discourse seems to divide most people into two camps: people who love the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien and people who hate them. You have mentioned in previous episodes how you wrote an adaptation of The Hobbit. For what I gather, it was a project you enjoyed for the most part. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Tolkien's work. What did you think of the Peter Jackson movies, both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit? And do you think movie TV adaptations should strictly adhere to Tolkien's legendarium, word for word? Legendarium. I love that word. Yeah, I did an adaptation of Hobbit, and you say that I enjoyed it for the most part. No, I enjoyed it entirely. It was a lot of fun. It was very challenging because I had to strip so much out. I had to strip out my favorite character, Bjorn, because there just wasn't room in the format for it. It's quite a dense novel, as dense as Lord of the Rings, although shorter. And yeah, I dug it. I love Tolkien's writing. And people go, oh, he takes 3 pages to describe a forest. So what? The language is beautiful. And if you don't want to read it, you can skip it, But his language is beautiful. I mean, I read it as a young man. I was probably 13 or 14 when I read Lord of the Rings over a summer. And I liked it. I liked the story. But, I'm just a young kid. I don't know anything about language or anything. So I found some of it boring. Some of it was a slog. Rereading it recently, it wasn't a slog because I'm an adult and I can appreciate what Tolkien was doing and keeping the language as close to a novel written in the 19th century as he could, to avoid anachronisms and things like that. I mean, he's writing like, William Makepeace Thackeray. He's writing like authors who would describe things to people who were not worldly. With television, the internet, movies, we've seen everything. We've seen everything, and we know what almost everything looks like. But people reading books back then didn't know what everything looked like, and his descriptions of basically England, his descriptions of battles and armor, and it's just, I love it. I dig it all. I like it a lot. And people that don't like it, well, who cares? But my bugaboo is that I don't understand why anybody wrote fantasy after this. There's all this fantasy by the pound. And why would you read Lord of the Rings and go, well, I'm going to write my own Lord of the Rings? Really? You think you can top this, and no one has. I've read some that were kind of entertaining, but nothing that comes close to what Tolkien accomplished here. So, yeah, why bother? Now the movies, people have problem with the movies and everything else. I thought Peter Jackson, he made some changes. I wasn't, you know, wild about. Um, and there's some parts of it I think um, that it could have been more imaginatively filmed, but overall, it's an earnest effort. I mean, guy obviously loves Tolkien, and this is his version of it. And I've watched these over, and I've watched the extended version, and people go, "Oh man, every movie has like 16 endings." I don't care. Bring it on. Make it 20 endings. Make it 30 endings. I liked visiting this world. I didn't want to leave it. I really enjoyed all the films, and kudos to him. What a massive undertaking this was, and what a risk for the studio involved. But it paid off, didn't it? So yeah, I mean, I like him now. The Amazon series, I mean, come on, seriously, give me a break. And the Hobbit movies, why did they have to make 3 movies? Two maybe, but 3, I mean, they really padded it out. And the last film is just, oh my gosh, we've only got 45 minutes of story. And they just stretch that out interminably. But the Lord of the Rings movie themselves, like I'm looking forward to watching them again soon. I just got 4K restorations of the, well, not a restoration, but 4K transfers. And I'm anxious to dig in again. Twin spin. It is a day of spin. Dara O'Sullivan is back. Pretend for a moment you're a supervillain in the mold of Doctor Doom or Ernest Stavro Blofeld. You are sitting on your throne while one of your underlings is groveling before you, begging for his life, having just failed in a mission. But your mind's made up, and the wretch has just bought himself a one-way ticket to your to your lake of man-eating piranhas. Obviously, you can't sully your hands with such a menial task, so you call on one of your more competent henchmen to dispose of the ingrate. What I want to know is, how would you summon the other henchman? Would you snap your fingers, clap your hands twice? Would you ring a small bell that you keep near your ivory throne for such an event? Yeah, Doom. I prefer my supervillains who get hands on. I mean, Doom was perfectly fine with taking out people himself. Blasting them with his gun, or some ray he had in his armor or whatever. I was cool with that. Don't ask anybody, even your henchmen, to do something you're not willing to do yourself. That's true of any boss. Blofeld, I like the Bond villains. They use the henchmen. Blofeld. Well, it depends on what iteration. He's been played by half a dozen actors, but I always go back to Donald Pleasance. This guy wasn't a real physical specimen. He's not going to get up and do anything himself. This guy's a couch potato, and he was fine. Letting others do the work. Dr. Evil, I like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers. I'd probably lean more toward him because he had all these remote controls on his chair that he could, drop you into a fiery pit or whatever. And I know some Bond villains have had that, shark tanks and piranha tanks and all the rest of it. But I really dig the chair. I like the look of it. Same reason I like, one of the main reasons I like Star Trek. Captain Kirk has this awesome chair he can do anything from the remote, but he's never going to lose the remote. It's built right into the arm. And Captain Kirk has the coolest job. He flies through space with his friends watching TV. But yeah, silly as he is, I mean, I go with the Doctor Evil thing. The fabulous chair. Dara is back. Why did I get? Oh yeah, you do get a triple spin. Hold on, let's give you your triple spin. You earned your triple spin. I just put it in the wrong order. Okay. Dara O'Sullivan is back with, also, which would be your preferred supervillain lair? Massive underground cave complex or hollowed out volcano? I'm a bunker guy. I would go with bunker. Caves are scary. I would go with bunker. I would go, Cheyenne Mountain kind of thing. I saw a video recently of a guy who inherited his dad's missile site. His dad bought a missile site, um, a Minuteman missile site to live in. And he had a house on top of it, but below it was this vast system of tunnels and chambers and, all in hardened concrete and everything else. I think that'd be cool. You certainly feel safe. You keep it out of a earthquake zone, and you'd be cool. I mean, who wouldn't want this? a lair, they just disappear. I'm going to go read a book in my secret lair, in my clandestine library of books that no one else can read or touch because I'm locking this 16-ton door behind me. Yeah, I'd definitely be a burrower. So volcano, I don't know why you wouldn't want, because the volcanoes, it's inactive. Yeah, until it gets active again. I mean, there's inactive volcanoes in Idaho that if they ever act up again, we're in serious trouble. So yeah, volcano, no. And caves are cold and damp, and you'd have to do dehumidifier running all the time. Hey, Guns of Mars is still out, just to throw another ad at you. It's my take on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barzoom, set 1,000 years after John Carter and Dejah Thoris. It has been called a spaghetti western on Mars, and that's good because that's what I was aiming for. And if you have questions, suggestions, you want to jump on the big show and try to confound me, BrunoBookstore@gmail.com, Bruno Bookstore at gmail.com. I'm about to do the Bill O'Reilly. Name your town if you wish to opine. But I don't need to know where you live. Okay. That's it for me this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching and likes and subscribing. And thanks for picking up 7 Deadly Sinners. If you did, if you didn't, you're going to be crying. All the other kids in the neighborhood are going to have it, and you're not going to know what they're talking about. Got to get it. I swear. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. And that's it for me. See you down the road.